I could see like a superhero driving it as their #1 car.
That's one opinion. What's yours? The new C30 from Volvo.
Studied graphic design. I only lasted 2 years and decided to start working. We started to play around with multimedia. Steve's a programmer. He studied programming at Monash as well, and together we just started fusing, I guess, design elements and programming together. So we started creating sort of interactive software. Then Steve and I worked for a company that they were a design/photography company, and we took them into multimedia and started developing there were installations for exhibitions that we started off doing. What happened was there was this exhibition happening at the exhibition buildings that Jeff shared. It was called Interact, and we thought, cool, here's our chance to show some interactive elements of our work. And we thought this exhibition was going to be, this is around 95, I think. 95, 96, something like that, 96, I think. We thought, here we go, everyone's going to show all this great interactive stuff that they've been doing. And so we did this crazy installation for this printing company who was heading towards digital printing at the time. And so we 3D modeled this toy and decided that when a visitor comes to the stand and stands on this pod, that the way they sway will influence this virtual donkey on screen, and he'll collapse in any direction. And we sold this to the client, along with our boss. We were just sort of, working at the time, being young designers and programmers. And the client loved it, thought, yeah, that's great. And we did it. And what happened was, when we got to this exhibition, we were actually the only ones that had any form of interactivity in this whole thing. Interactivity and how we can interact with technology in a new sort of ways, away from the screen, away from the mouse. And so we kind of got a taste for that, 11 years ago, I guess, in '96, when we first started playing with software and what can be done. It was quite ingenious in a way. It was this, if you can imagine a dartboard, and each section of the dartboard, you got your 20, your 50, and your 60 and all that, each section was a frame from the animation. So as you tilted the pod down, you're actually travelling towards the end of the dartboard and therefore triggering that image. And so they're all static images, but as you rolled around this dartboard, you actually triggered off these buttons that control the actual animation. And so all we were doing was really triggering buttons to switch on an image, which is kind of like, day one. But in a way, no one was, I guess, sort of looking outside of the square of what a button could be. Anyway, we'll move on to the better half of the century. I guess, Steve and I got a taste for that, and then we just started to think about, well, what else how can we interact with things in a more intuitive way? How can we get away from the mouse and the joysticks and screens and all that? So the next sort of idea that we came up with was what you're sitting on now. This is Virgil, right? This is, again, this is 97, right? Steve and I came up with this guy named Virgil, the digital rocking horse. He's a wireless navigational device. So when the kid jumps on, there's a screen in front of you, got to imagine that. And as you rock, you travel through a virtual terrain on screen. And when you turn his head, you turn to steer in the game. And the idea was to have sort of very intuitive navigational tool for, you know, 1-year-olds that could sit on this and learn, you know, through the process of actually something that's very intuitive for them, which is a rocking horse. This guy's travelled the world. He's been to like 7 different countries, I think. He's been sat on by hundreds of kids and adults. So from there, from Virgil, what Virgil allowed us to do was actually, first of all, travel the world. Like we went to, you know, many different, you know, so many different shows with the rocking horse, like, and quite varied, like from new media art biennales in like South Korea to almost like Moomba parades in Long Island in New York, you know. So it was very, the types of places he got us to, like the people were interested in using him, was really quite broad. Like, you know, that was quite an experience as well. So he was sort of our ticket, in a sense, to show our wares and show what we're capable of doing, because we actually both developed the hardware, like this guy, and the software. So the software is 3D software that we developed. And so we moved on to what we now call the Pixile. The Pixile's all around us in a sense. All these objects that you see here, these white objects, we've developed a software that's capable of projecting, wrapping onto surfaces, onto 3-dimensional surfaces. So for instance, these spheres, we project images onto it and make it look like as though it's spinning in mid-space. And we can match, you know, cubes, you know, hundreds of cubes or quads, we call them, you know, in space, and project different video feeds directly onto them. And so, yeah, basically we developed this software to be able to wrap 3-dimensional surfaces. It's a lot more exciting than what I'm actually saying. We've got this cube here, but you have to sort of shift that way because the projection's happening on this side. So what I'm doing is actually mapping out the space, the quads. You do that like with the mouse, just clicking the corners of the surfaces, and that becomes a video-based surface. This particular version responds to sound, so it's actually sort of beat matching to the music played. So all those colours are actually responding in real time. Particle effects that happen in real time. So recently we did a project that was called Arctic Sanctuary, where there was a snow field that you can actually interact with the particles in real time. Originally we were actually projecting our faces onto the ping pong ball, and we started thinking about, well, can we project something to look like it's inside of this ping pong ball? So we used a physics engine to pour objects inside of that ping pong ball. So to make we basically made a hollow 3D sphere and poured, you know, little balls inside of that. And it actually looked quite believable from the right angle. So we did tailor the technology around ideas that we had as to what we wanted to achieve. You know, the next thing we did was take 2 ping pong balls and make them spin off one another. So, you know, then we applied that to the software. So yeah, we have gradually built it with those ideas in mind. Like, then, you know, one thing that we had to do very early on was actually develop a editing environment so that, because you can't really just... I do like fish. There's something about, I don't know, there is something about fish. I remember I went to a fish shop like when I was young. I found this bathtub and I wanted to turn it into a pond. I'll just explain briefly what the fish were about. Like how we use fish was, rather than us, you know, there's a lot of those sort of interactive walls and interaction done on the floor with, you know, you can step and things, you know, sort of happen around you. And there's a real toyish element to those interactions, like kind of like what iToy is. What we did was we used the fish as points of interaction, as in we were tracking the fish's movements in order to trigger sounds. You know, water lilies that were virtual above the fish tank, the fish were able to hit those and change the music. And when you see the fish interact with these virtual objects, it almost is more believable than when you do it yourself, because that tactility is not there, that tactile response. So, but when you see fish do it, it all of a sudden becomes more believable, like, yeah, the fish really did that.
Yeah.
And because we don't have that first-hand response to the, you know, lack of feedback, in a sense, forced feedback, that, you know, by someone else doing it, it actually encouraged sort of more sense of wonder and intrigue.
Yeah.
It's an experience that, in a way, you know, we're still, I think, quite far from reaching that responsiveness that, you know, we have in nature. In the virtual world, you know, it's still quite robotic-like and rigid, and yeah, there's
contrived, isn't it? It's very contrived, very controlled.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess it.
On the spot. Yes. Right. Okay. Interesting. So something about you guys. How's that? Does that work? I mean, maybe. I think there's something missing. There's a little something missing. There's got to be, like if it was, whoa, like that. You know, there's got to be some sort of connection between these two sheets. There you go. Let's get the same thing on it. They're both the same. Look, the same picture.
Yeah,
that's good. Cool, we did it.
Awesome. Cheers.
No problem. Great.